Greetings, I'm the man behind the mask, and I'd like to talk to you about hockey. Yes, let's talk about hockey, the show that journeys through the history of the sport of ice hockey from its disputed origins to the game we see today. Now, the Stanley Cup is the most iconic of all sports trophies and has a longer history than the NHL itself, with its origins dating back to 1892 when Lord Stanley donated it to be held by the champion hockey team in the Dominion of Canada. Upon donating the cup, however, Lord Stanley set forth some conditions. The first of which was that the winners were to return the cup in good order when required by the trustees in order that it may be handed over to any other team which may win it. But throughout the years, as players followed tradition by spending their day with the cup, not everyone has followed Lord Stanley's original proclamation. And today we're going to look at 8 of those tales. So, in honor of the upcoming NHL playoffs, these are the top 8 Stanley Cup tales.
Many people describe winning the Stanley Cup as somewhat of a religious experience. But in 1996, Colorado Avalanche defenseman Sylvain Lefebvre took that statement a step further and had his first child baptized in the trophy. 10 years later, Andrew Hutchinson of the Carolina Hurricanes wanted to do the same thing with his child, but the plane carrying the cup was delayed and the baptism went on without Lord Stanley's hardware. Forward Mark Messier has had the pleasure of winning the Stanley Cup championship 6 times over a 10-year span, from 1984 to 1994. But during his 4th round with the cup in 1988, Messier ended up denting the trophy. After this happened, he decided that the best course of action was to take it to an automotive repair shop to get it nice and fixed up. In 1924, while on their way to a victory party, the Montreal Canadiens players stored the trophy in the trunk of their car. En route to the festivities, their vehicle suffered a flat tire. So the players removed the cup to get at the spare, changed the tire, and drove off. However, they failed to notice that they left the Stanley Cup behind. But when it came time to drink champagne from the cup, they realized they didn't have it with them and drove back to where they changed the tire. Thankfully, the cup was still there and the celebration could continue. In 1940, the New York Rangers won their 3rd Stanley Cup championship, and that same year, the mortgage on Madison Square Garden was paid off. So the management thought it would be a good idea to ceremoniously burn the mortgage in the cup. Now there are some that think the burning of the mortgage in the cup was sacrilege, and thus responsible for the Rangers' 54-year championship drought that followed this little incident. Maybe it was the mortgage burning, or maybe it was a few players on the team reportedly urinating on the cup that evoked that particular curse. In Chicago Stadium in the spring of 1962, the Montreal Canadiens were losing in Game 3 of a playoff series to the defending Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks. Upset by this, a Montreal fan decided to take matters into his own hands. He left his seat and traveled down to the front lobby, where he then broke into the glass showcase holding the Stanley Cup on display. With the cup in hand, he made a dash for the doorway, before an usher stopped him and asked what he was doing. He responded with, "I'm taking the cup back to Montreal, where it belongs." However, his escape was thwarted when the calls of the usher signaled a nearby police officer. After the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Cup in 1962, the original bowl and collar were retired to the Hockey Hall of Fame, where they were placed on display. Around 8 years later, in January of 1970, the collar was stolen from the hall and remained missing for 7 years, before an anonymous phone call told police to check the back room of a Toronto cleaning store for a very important piece of history. Once at the scene, the police found none other than the original collar of the Stanley Cup, wrapped up like a Christmas present and ready to return home to the Hockey Hall of Fame after 7 years of hibernation. Back in the early years of the Stanley Cup, it was just a quaint trophy, and hardly the iconic figure it is now. It was around this period in time when the newly crowned Montreal Wanderers hired a professional photographer to take their picture with the trophy. However, upon the photo shoot's completion, the team forgot one thing when they left: the cup. It would be a few weeks before the Wanderers' management realized their mistake and returned to the photographer's house, whereupon they discovered that the photographer's mother decided it would make a wonderful flower pot and had used it to plant some geraniums. Before the absent-minded incident of the Wanderers, the cup was in the possession of the Ottawa Hockey Club from 1903 to February of 1906. After successfully defending their title in 1905, the Ottawa players took the cup out for a night on the town. After quite a few rounds of celebratory drinks, they thought it would be a good idea to see if they could kick the cup across the Rideau Canal. The cup, which at this point was only a cup, not the layered trophy we know today, was then lined up and drop-kicked by one of the Ottawa players. In a true test of his accuracy and distance, the cup landed right on target, in the canal. With that established, the boys went on their merry way while the cup remained where it landed. That is, until the next day, when the now sober players returned to retrieve the cup from atop the frozen canal.
Well, there you have it. Those are the top 8 Stanley Cup tales. And who knows, after the cup is claimed once again following the close of the upcoming playoffs, we may have a new story to add to this list by summer's end.